Okay, we're on YouTube. So, for those of you watching this on YouTube, this is the Monday Book Club, and we are continuing our reading of Through the Looking Glass. And today we begin at chapter 3. I'm sure you're aware that Through the Looking Glass is easily available on Gutenberg if you don't have a copy. So, chapter 3, and it appears that I am the first reader today. So let me go to there. And chapter 3, Looking Glass Insects. Of course, the first thing to do was to make a grand survey of the country she was going to travel through. Well, it's something very like learning geography, thought Alice, as she stood on tiptoe in hopes of being able to see a little further. Principal rivers, there are none. Principal mountains, I'm on the only one, but I don't think it's got any name. Principal towns, why? What are these creatures making honey down there? They can't be bees. Nobody ever saw bees a mile off, you know. And for some time she stood silent, watching one of them that was bustling about among the flowers, poking its proboscis into them, just as if it was a regular bee, thought Alice. However, this was anything but a regular bee. In fact, it was an elephant, as Alice soon found out, though the idea quite took her breath away at first. Oh, what enormous flowers they must be, was her next idea. Something like cottages with the roofs taken off and stocks put to them. And what quantities of honey they must make. I think I'll go down. And no, I won't just yet. And she went on, checking herself, just as if she was beginning to run down the hill and trying to find some excuse for turning shy so suddenly. It'll never do to go down among them without a good long branch to brush them away. And what fun it'll be when they ask me how I like my walk. I shall say, oh, well, I liked it well enough. There came the favorite toss of the head. Only it was so dusty and hot, and the elephants did tease so. Next reader, please.
I think I'll go down the other way, she said after a pause, and perhaps I may visit the elephants later on. Besides, I do so want to get into the third square. So with this excuse, she ran down the hill and jumped over the first of the 6 little brooks. Tickets, please, said the guard, putting his head in at the window. In a moment, everybody was holding out a ticket. They were about the same size as the people and quite seemed to fill the carriage. Now then, show your ticket, Bart, the guard went on, looking angrily at Alice, and a great many voices all said together, like the chorus of a song, Alice, don't keep him waiting, child. Why, his time is worth £1,000 a minute. I'm afraid I haven't got one, Alice said in a frightened tone. There wasn't a ticket office where I came from. And again the chorus of voices went on. There wasn't room for one where she came from. The land there is worth £1,000 an inch. Don't make excuses, said the guard. You should have bought one from the engine driver. And once more the chorus of voices went on with, the man that drives the engine, by the smoke alone is worth £1,000 a puff. Alice thought to herself, then there's no use in speaking. The voices didn't join in this time, so as she hadn't spoken. But to her great surprise, they all thought in chorus. I hope you understand what thinking in chorus means, for I must confess that I don't. Better say nothing at all. Language is worth £1,000 a word. Next, please, Tom.
I shall dream about £1,000 tonight. I know I shall, thought Alice. All this time, the guard was looking at her, first through a telescope, then through a microscope, and then through an opera glass. At last, he said, "You're traveling the wrong way," and shut up the window and went away. "So young a child," said a gentleman sitting opposite to her. He was dressed in white paper. "Ought to know which way she's going, even if she doesn't know her own name." A goat that was sitting next to the gentleman in white shut his eyes and said in a loud voice, "She ought to know her way to the ticket office, even if she doesn't know her alphabet." There was a beetle sitting next to the goat. It was a very queer carriage full of passengers altogether, and as the rule seemed to be that they should all speak in turn, he went on with, "She'll have to go back from here as luggage." Alice couldn't see who was sitting beyond the beetle, but a hoarse voice spoke next. "Change engines," it said, and there it choked and was obliged to leave off. It sounds like a horse, Alice thought to herself, and an extremely small voice close to her ear said, "You might make a joke on that, something about horse and horse, you know." Then a very gentle voice in the distance said, "She must be labelled Lass with Care, you know." And after that, other voices went on. What a number of people there are in the carriage, thought Alice, saying, "She must go by post, and she's got a head on her. She must be sent as a message by the telegraph. She must draw the train herself the rest of the way," and so on. But the gentleman dressed in white paper leaned forwards and whispered in her ear, "Never mind what they all say, my dear, but take a return ticket every time the train stops." Katrina?
Indeed, I shan't, Alice said rather impatiently. I don't belong to this railway journey at all. I was in a wood just now, and I wish I could get back there. "You might make a joke on that," said the little voice close to her ear. "Something about you would if you could, you know." "Don't tease so," said Alice, looking about in vain to see where the voice came from. "If you're so anxious to have a joke made, why don't you make one yourself?" The little voice sighed deeply. It was very unhappy, evidently, and Alice would have said something pitying to comfort it if it would only sigh like other people, she thought. But this was such a wonderfully small sigh that she couldn't have heard it at all if it hadn't come from quite close to her ear. The consequence of this was that it tickled her ear very much and quite took off her thoughts from the unhappiness of the poor creature. "I know you are a friend," the little voice went on, "a dear friend and an old friend, and you wouldn't hurt me, though I am an insect." "What kind of insect?" Alice inquired a little anxiously. What she really wanted to know was whether it could sting or not, but she thought it wouldn't be quite a civil question to ask. "What? Then you don't?" the little voice began, when it was drowned by a shrill scream from the engine, and everybody jumped up in alarm, Alice among the rest. Donna.
The horse, who had put his head out of the window, quietly drew it in and said, "It's only a brook we have to jump over." Everybody seemed satisfied with this, though Alice felt a little nervous at the idea of trains jumping at all. However, it'll take us into the fourth square, and that's some comfort. In another moment, she felt the carriage rise straight up into the air, and in her fright, she caught at the nearest thing to her hand, which happened to be the goat's beard. But the beard seemed to melt away as she touched it, and she found herself sitting quietly under a tree, while the gnat, for that was the insect she had been talking to, was balancing itself on a twig just over her head and fanning her with its wings. It certainly was a very large gnat, about the size of a chicken, Alice thought. Still, she couldn't feel nervous with it, after they had been talking together so long. "Then you don't like all insects," Nat went on, as quietly as if nothing had happened. "I like them when they can talk," Alice said. "None of them ever talk, where I come from." "What sort of insects do you rejoice in? Where you come from?" the gnat. "I don't rejoice in insects at all," Alice explained, "because I'm rather afraid of them, at least large kind. but I can see the names of some of them. Of course they answer to their names, the gnat remarked carelessly. I never knew them to, but they're having names, the gnat said, if they won't answer to them. No use to them, said Alice, but it's useful to the people that named them, I suppose. If not, why do things have names at all? They, said the gnat. In the wood down there, they've got no names. However, go on with your list of insects. Well, there's horsefly, Alice began, counting up names on her fingers. All right, said the gnat. Half up that bush, you'll see a rocking horsefly if you look. It's made entirely of wood and gets about by swinging itself from branch to branch. Next week.
What does it live on? Alice asked with great curiosity. Sap and sawdust, said the gnat. Go on with the list. Alice looked at the rocking horsefly with great interest and made up her mind that it must have just been repainted. It looked so bright and sticky. And then she went on. And there's the dragonfly. Look on the branch above your head, said the gnat, and there you'll find a snapdragonfly. Its body is made of plum pudding, its wings of holly leaves, and its head is a raisin burning in brandy. And what does it live on? Alice asked as before. Frumentary and mince pies, the gnat replied, and it makes its nest in a Christmas box. And then there's the butterfly, Alice went on, after she had taken a good look at the insect with its head on fire, and had thought to herself, I wonder if that's the reason insects are so fond of flying into candles, because they want to turn into snapdragonflies. Crawling at your feet, said the gnat. Alice drew her feet back in some alarm. You may observe a bread and butter fly. Its wings are thin slices of bread and butter, its body is a crust, and its head is a lump of sugar. And what does it live on? Weak tea with cream in it. A new difficulty came into Alice's head. Supposing it couldn't find any, she suggested. Then it would die, of course. But that must happen very often, Alice remarked thoughtfully. It always happens, said the gnat. After this, Alice was silent for a minute or two, pondering. The gnat amused itself meanwhile by humming round and round her head. At last it settled again and remarked, Suppose you don't want to lose your name. No, indeed, Alice said a little anxiously. And yet I don't know, the gnat went on in a careless tone. Only think how convenient it would be if you could manage to go home without it. For instance, if the governess wanted to call you to your lessons, she could call out, Come here, and there she would have to leave off. So there wouldn't be any name for her to call. And of course she wouldn't have to go, you know. Next, please. Des.
That would never do, I'm sure, said Alice. The governess would never think of excusing me lessons for that. If she couldn't remember my name, she'd call me Miss, as the servants do. Well, if she said Miss, and didn't say anything more than that remark, of course you'd miss your lessons. It's a joke. I wish you had made it. Why do you wish I had made it, Alice asked. It's a very bad one. But the gnat only sighed deeply, while two large tears came rolling down its cheeks. You shouldn't make jokes, Alice said, if it makes you so unhappy. Then came another of those melancholy little sighs, and this time the poor gnat really seemed to have sighed itself away, for when Alice looked up, there was nothing whatever to be seen on the twig. And as she was getting quite chilly with sitting still so long, she got up and walked on. She very soon came to an open field with a wood on the other side of it. It was much darker than the last wood, and Alice felt a little timid about going into it. However, on second thoughts, she made up her mind to go on. For I certainly won't go back, she thought, to herself, and this was the only way to the 8th square. Next, please, John.
This must be the wood, she said thoughtfully to herself, where things have no names. I wonder what'll become of my name when I go in. I shouldn't like to lose it at all, because they'd have to give me another, and it would be almost certain to be an ugly one. But then the fun would be trying to find the creature that had got my old name. That's just like the advertisements, you know, when people lose dogs. Answers to the name of Dash had on its brass collar. Just fancy calling everything you met Alice till one of them answered. Only they wouldn't answer at all if they were wise. She was rambling on in this way when she reached the wood. It looked very cool and shady. Well, at any rate, it's a great comfort, she said as she stepped under the trees after being so hot to get into into what? She went on, rather surprised at not being able to think of the word. I mean to get under this, you know, putting her hand on the trunk of the tree. What does it call itself? I wonder. I do believe it's got no name. Why, to be sure, it hasn't. Anne, are you reading?
No, I won't. Thank you.
Oh, and Duncan.
Okay. So she stood silent for a minute, thinking. Then she began again. This really has happened after all. And now, who am I? I will remember if I can. I'm determined to do it. But being determined didn't help very much, and all she could say after a great deal of puzzling was, L. I know it begins with L. Just then a fawn came wandering by. It looked at Alice with its large, gentle eyes, but it didn't seem at all frightened. Here then, Alice said, as she held out her hand and tried to stroke it. But it only started back a little and then stood looking at her again. What do you call yourself? The fawn said at last. Such a soft, sweet voice it had. I wish I knew, thought poor Alice. She answered rather sadly, Nothing just now. Well, think again, it said. That won't do. Alice thought, but nothing came of it. Please, would you tell me what you call yourself? She said timidly. I think that might help a little. I'll tell you if you'll move on a little further, the fawn said. I can't remember here. So they walked on together through the wood. Alice with her arms clasped lovingly round the soft neck of the fawn, till they came out into another open field, and there the fawn gave a sudden bound into the air and shook itself free from Alice's arm. I'm a fawn, it cried out with a voice of delight, and dear me, you're a human child. A sudden look of alarm came into its beautiful brown eyes, and in another moment it darted away at full speed. Alice stood looking after it, almost ready to cry with vexation at having lost her dear little fellow traveler so suddenly. However, I know my name now, she said. That's some comfort. Alice, Alice, I won't forget it again. And now, which of these finger posts ought I to follow? I wonder. Next.
It was not a very difficult question to answer, as there was only one road through the wood, and the two finger posts both pointed along it. I'll settle it, Alice said to herself, when the road divides and they point different ways. But this did not seem likely to happen. She went on and on, a long way, but wherever the road divided, there were sure to be two finger posts pointing the same way, one marked to Tweedledum's house, and the other to the house of Tweedledee. I do believe, said Alice at last, that they live in the same house. I wonder I never thought of that before. But I can't stay there long. I'll just call and say, "How do you do?" and ask them the way out of the wood. If I could only get to the 8th square before it gets dark. So she wandered on, talking to herself as she went, till, on turning a sharp corner, she came upon two fat little men, so suddenly that she could not help starting back. And in another moment she recovered herself, feeling sure that they must be. Next, please.
Chapter 4, Tweedledum and Tweedledee. They were standing under a tree, each with an arm round the other's neck, and Alice knew which was which in a moment, because one of them had Dum embroidered on his collar, and the other Dee. I suppose they've each got Tweedle round at the back of the collar, she said to herself. They stood so still that she quite forgot they were alive, and she was just looking round to see if the word Tweedle was written at the back of each collar, when she was startled by a voice coming from one marked Dum. If you think we're waxworks, he said, you ought to pay, you know. Waxworks weren't made to be looked at for nothing. Nohow. Contrariwise, added the one marked D, if you think we're alive, you ought to speak. I'm sure I'm very sorry, was all Alice could say, but the words of the old song kept ringing through her head like the ticking of a clock, and she could hardly help saying them out loud. Tweedledum and Tweedledee agreed to have a battle, for Tweedledum said Tweedledee had spoiled his nice new rattle. Just then flew down a monstrous crow, as black as a tar barrel, which frightened both the hero so they quite forgot their quarrel. I know what you're thinking about, said Tweedledum, but it isn't so. Nohow. Contrariwise, continued Tweedledee, if it was so, it might be, and if it were so, it would be. But as it isn't, it ain't. That's logic. Katrina?
I was thinking, Alice said very politely, which is the best way out of this wood? It's getting so dark. Would you tell me, please? But the fat little men only looked at each other and grinned. They looked so exactly like a couple of great schoolboys that Alice couldn't help pointing her finger at Tweedledum and saying, "First boy." "Nohow," Tweedledum cried out briskly and shut his mouth up again with a snap. "Next boy," said Alice, passing on to Tweedledee, though she felt quite certain he would only shout out contrariwise, and so he did. "You've begun wrong," cried Tweedledum. "The first thing in a visit is to say how do you do and shake hands." And here the two brothers gave each other a hug, and then they held out the two hands that were free to shake hands with her. Alice did not like shaking hands with either of them first, for fear of hurting the other one's feelings. So as the best way out of the difficulty, she took hold of both hands at once. The next moment they were dancing round in a ring. This seemed quite natural, she remembered afterwards, and she was not even surprised to hear music playing. It seemed to come from the tree under which they were dancing, and it was done as well as she could make it out by the branches rubbing one across the other like fiddles and fiddlesticks. But it certainly was funny, Alice said afterwards when she was telling her sister the history of all this, to find myself singing "Here We Go Round the Mulberry Bush." I don't know when I began it, but somehow I felt as if I'd been singing it for a long, long time. Next, please.
The other two dancers were fat and very soon out of breath. More time found is enough for one dance, Tweedledum panted out. The dancing only as they had music time. As they let Alice's hand and stood looking at her for a minute, there was a rough, awkward pause, as Alice didn't know how to begin a conversation with people she had just been dancing with. It would never do to say, "How do you do now?" said to herself. We seem to have got beyond that somehow. But at last, "Oh, thank you very much." Poetry? Yes, pretty well. some poetry, Alice said doubtfully. Would you tell me which road leads out of the wood? Flower, said Tweedledee, looking around at Tweedledum with great solemn eyes and not noticing Alice's question. Walrus and Carpenter is the longest, Tweedledum replied, giving his brother an affectionate hug. Tweedledee began instantly. The sun was shining. Here Alice ventured to interrupt. If it's very long, she said, as politely as she could, would you tell me first which road? Tweedledee smiled gently and began again. The sun was shining on the sea, shining with all his might. He did his very best to make the billows smooth and bright. And this was odd because it was the middle of the night. The moon was shining sulkily because she thought the sun had got no business to be there after the day was done. Him, she said, to come and spoil the fun. The sea was wet as wet could be. The sands were dry as dry. It couldn't be a cloud because no cloud was in the sky. No birds flying overhead. There were no birds to fly. Walrus and Carpenter were walking close at hand. They wept like anything to see such quantities of sand. If it could be cleared away, they said, it would be grand. Next week.
Okay, if 7 maids with 7 mops swept it for half a year, do you suppose, the Walrus said, that they could get it clear? Doubt it, said the Carpenter, and shed a bitter tear. Oh, oysters, come and walk with us, the Walrus did beseech. A pleasant walk, a pleasant talk, along the briny beach. We cannot do with more than 4 to give a hand to each. The eldest oyster looked at him, but never a word he said. The eldest oyster winked his eye and shook his heavy head, meaning to say he did not choose to leave the oyster bed. But 4 young oysters hurried up, all eager for the treat. Their coats were brushed, their faces washed, their shoes were clean and neat. And this was odd, because they hadn't any feet. I know. 4 other oysters followed them, and yet another 4, and thick and fast they came at last, and more and more and more, all hopping through the frothy waves and scrambling to the shore. The Walrus and the Carpenter walked on a mile or so, and then they rested on a rock conveniently low, and all the little oysters stood and waited in a row. The time has come, the Walrus said, to talk of many things, of shoes and ships and sealing wax, of cabbages and kings, and why the sea is boiling hot, or whether pigs have rings. Yes. Yeah.
Wait a bit, you oyster said. Is that right? You stop? Sorry,
But wait a bit, the oysters cried.
sorry, I thought I interrupted. I beg your pardon. But
No.
wait a bit, the oysters cried before we have our chat. For some of us are out of breath, and all of us are fat. No hurry, said the Carpenter, and thanked him much for that. A loaf of bread, the Walrus said, is what we chiefly need. Pepper and vinegar, besides, are very good indeed. Now, if you're ready, oyster dear, we can begin to feed. But not on us, the oysters cried, turning a little blue. After such kindness, that would be a dismal thing to do. The night is fine, the Walrus said. Do you admire the view? It was so kind of you to come, and you were very nice. The Carpenter said nothing but, cut us another slice. I wish you were not quite so deaf. I've had to ask you twice. It seems a shame, the Walrus said, to play them such a trick. after we've brought them out so far and made them trot so quick. The carpenter said nothing but, the butter's spread too thick. I weep for you, the walrus said. I deeply sympathize. With sobs and tears he sorted out those of the largest size, holding his pocket handkerchief before his streaming eye. Oh, oyster, said the carpenter, you've had a pleasant run. Shall we be trotting home again? But answer came there none, and this was scarcely odd, because they'd eaten every one. Next, please, John.
I have in my book a lot of commentary on that poem. Would you
Yeah.
rather have read that maybe instead of going on right away?
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely, definitely.
The masterpiece of nonsense is the meter of Thomas Hood's Dream of Eugene Aram, but only the style of Hood's poem is satirized. As a check against the tendency to find too much intended symbolism in the Alice books, it is well to remember that when Carroll gave the manuscript of this poem to Tenniel for illustrating, he offered the artist a choice of drawing a carpenter, butterfly, or baronet. Each word fitted the rhyme scheme, and Carroll had no preference as far as the nonsense was concerned. Tenniel chose the carpenter. The box-like paper hat that Tenniel had placed on the carpenter's head is no longer folded by carpenters. However, these hats are still widely used by operators of newspaper printing presses. They fold them from blank sheets of newsprint and wear them to keep the ink out of their hair. J.B. Priestley has written an amusing article on the walrus and the carpenter that was in the New Statesman in August 1957, in which he interprets the two figures as archetypes of the two kinds of politicians. Here, just a minute. Cabbages and Kings, which is the part of this that everybody remembers, was the title of O. Henry's first book. The first four lines of this stanza are the best known and most often quoted lines of the poem. In The Adventure of the Mad Tea Party, the last story in The Adventures of Ellery Queen, these lines are an important element in the detective's curious method of frightening a confession out of a murderer. For Seville, Clark's Alice operative Carroll added an additional verse. The carpenter, he ceased to rob, the walrus ceased to weep. They finished all the oysters, and they laid them down to sleep, and of their craft and cruelty the punishment to reap. After the walrus and carpenter have gone to sleep, the ghosts of the two oysters appear on the stage to sing and dance and punish the sleepers by stamping on their chests. Carroll felt, and apparently audiences agreed with him, that this provided a more effective ending for the episodes and also somewhat mollified oyster sympathizers among the spectators. The ghost of the first oyster dances a mazurka and sings. The carpenter is sleeping, the butter's on his face, the vinegar and pepper are all about the place. Let oysters rock your cradle and lull you into rest, and if that will not do it, will sit upon your chest. Will sit upon your chest, will sit upon your chest. The simple way of doing it is to sit upon your chest. The ghost of the second oyster dance a hornpipe and sings, O woeful weeping walrus, your tears are all a sham. You're greedier for oysters than children are for jam. You like to have an oyster to give a meal a zest. Excuse me, wicked walrus, for stamping on your chest. For stamping on your chest, for stamping on your chest. Excuse me, wicked walrus, for stamping on your chest. Okay, that's all about that.
Okay, so don't you feel that the walrus and the carpenter is so far above everything else that we've read?
Oh, the poem?
Yeah. I mean, the whole episode The whole episode of the Walrus and the Carpenter, to me, comes across as really brilliant,
Mhm,
and actually going back to be the equal of some of the stuff in Alice in Wonderland.
mhm.
Whereas much of Through the Looking Glass just seems contrived. It's almost like, I mean, I'm just telling you how I feel. It's almost like Lewis Carroll was possessed of brilliance when he wrote Alice in Wonderland. And then he felt compelled to have to write something else to entertain the girls.
I was thinking something like that when we were reading. I think it's simply, it's not as magical
Yeah.
as Alice, or it doesn't have quite the charm and the magic of it.
Yeah, it seems more, other than the Walrus and the Carpenter, which also seems magical, although quite horrifying. Um, Much of what we've been reading in Through the Looking Glass seems contrived.
Yes.
It's kind of like, well, God, the girls really loved Alice in Wonderland. What can I do? And then he tried to do it without the level of inspiration.
Yeah, I felt that way as a child too.
Yeah,
I
me too.
don't
Yeah.
remember The Looking Glass very well. It
Mhm.
was less interesting or less captivating.
Mm-hmm.
But I think he had more a spontaneity of thinking while he was writing the other, that he was having fun with it. And the ideas were coming
Yeah.
faster.
Yeah. Which is what I mean when I use the word inspired. It's kind of like it wrote itself.
Mhm.
And actually here in Through the Looking Glass, I feel like we have Dodson, the Oxford mathematician, trying
Yeah.
to come up with something to keep the girls entertained because he'd been so fortunate with the first one.
Mhm. Yeah.
But
I'm glad you brought that up.
The Walrus and the Carpenter is brilliant.
Yes.
And it makes me wonder, I mean, you gave us a lot of background, Joan, but I'm wondering, was this really an original with Lewis Carroll?
Not the meter. The meter, he,
Neither was from elsewhere.
was elsewhere. The rest of it, I think, was all him. It's other people that used parts of it in their works.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I read this. The Cabbages and Kings was the title of O. Henry's first book. The first 4 lines of the stanza are the best. Oh, I read this. In the Adventures of the Mad Tea Party, the latest story, it's in the Adventures of Ellery Queen, and I think it was borrowed from more than his borrowing.
Okay. And the Cabbages and Queen, O. Henry wrote that
Mm-hmm.
before or after?
After.
He wrote it after.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he used the title.
Okay, well, that makes sense. And trivialness is that O. Henry was an Austin resident
Ah,
for many years, and actually he was put in I think he was put in jail for embezzlement. He worked for a bank. I think he was just a teller or something, and he was convicted of embezzlement, I believe. I should be checked on that. He was convicted of something though, and put in jail here in Austin.
hmm,
Wow.
hmm.
One line that has me puzzled here is just in the last stanza. The carpenter asked, "Shall we be trotting home again?" But answer came there none. Now that line sparks something in my brain. I cannot remember where or what, but answer came there none.
Hmm.
And
You
Then There
understand?
Were None was the name of a movie. And Then There Were None.
But answer came. I don't know.
10 Little Indians, right?
Anything in the Ancient Mariner, Coleridge's Ancient Mariner, is there a line like that in the
Oh.
something, but then answer came there none.
Huh.
It's just there's something going on inside and I cannot get it.
Uh-huh.
Answer came there
I
none.
think that's maybe a phrase that's been used a lot in literature.
Yeah, Agatha Christie had a book called And Then There
And
Were
then
None.
there were none.
Mhm.
And then there were none, yes, yeah.
And then the 10 Little Indians.
Yes. I think it's something that people have used of something disappearing often.
And actually, I'm looking at this thing that there was, geez, there were 10 Little Indians.
I was thinking of the poem by Walter de la Mare, The Listeners. You know, where he knocks on the door, but nobody answers.
Yes,
But
yes.
maybe I don't think it's there. But anyway.
I'm sure that by about 3 or 4 o'clock tomorrow morning now, it'll pop into my brain, whatever it is.
There you go. Yeah.
Don't call me to tell me.
All righty. Are we ready to proceed on a little bit now? Okay, and we ended the last one with I like the walrus best because he was a little sorry for the poor oysters. Okay. Who was the last reader?
Anne, who didn't read, so it's back to you, I think, Duncan.
Oh, okay, so do I start with he ate more than the carpenter, though?
Yep.
Yeah. I like
He
the
ate more.
I
Okay.
like the
He ate more than the carpenter, though, said Tweedledee. You see, he held his handkerchief in front so that the carpenter couldn't count how many he took. Contrariwise. Well, that was mean, Alice said indignantly. Then I like the carpenter best, if he didn't eat so many as the walrus. But he ate as many as he could, said Tweedledum. This was a puzzler. After a pause, Alice began. Well, they were both very unpleasant characters. Here she checked herself in some alarm at hearing something that sounded to her like the puffing of a large steam engine in the wood near them, though she feared it was more likely to be a wild beast. Are, are there any lions or tigers about here? She asked timidly. Ah, it's only the Red Queen's, no, the Red King snoring, said Tweedledee. Come and look at him. The brothers cried, and they each took one of Alice's hands, and they led her up to where the king was sleeping. Isn't he a lovely sight? Said Tweedledum. Alice couldn't honestly say that he was. He had a tall red nightcap on with a tassel, and he was lying crumpled up into a sort of untidy heap and snoring loudly. Fit to snore his head off, as Tweedledum remarked. I'm afraid you'll catch cold with lying on the damp grass, said Alice, who was a very thoughtful little girl. Ah, he's dreaming now, said Tweedledee. And what do you think he's dreaming about? Alice said. Ah, no one can guess that. Why, about you, Tweedledee exclaimed, clapping his hand triumphantly. And if he left off dreaming about you, where do you suppose you'd be? Well, where I am now, of course, said Alice. Not you, Tweedledee retorted contemptuously. You'd be nowhere. Why, you're only sort of a thing in his dream. If that king was to awake, added Tweedledum, you'd go out, bang, just like a candle. Next reader.
I shouldn't, Alice exclaimed indignantly. Besides, If I'm only a sort of thing in his dream, what are you, I should like to know? Ditto, said Tweedledum. Ditto, ditto, cried Tweedledee. He shouted this so loud that Alice couldn't help saying, "Hush, you'll be waking him. I'm afraid he makes so much noise." "Well, it's no use your talking about waking him," said Tweedledum, "when you're only one of the things in his dream. You know very well you're not real." "I am real," said Alice, and began to cry. "You won't make yourself a bit realer by crying," Tweedledee remarked. "There's nothing to cry about." "If I wasn't real," Alice said, half laughing through her tears, it all seemed so ridiculous, "I shouldn't be able to cry." "I hope you don't suppose those are real tears," Tweedledum interrupted in a tone of great contempt. "I know they're talking nonsense," Alice thought to herself, "and it's foolish to cry about it." So she brushed away her tears and went on, as cheerfully as she could. "At any rate, I'd better be going out of the wood, for really it's coming on very dark. Do you think it's going to rain?" Tweedledum spread a large umbrella over himself and his brother, and looked up into it. "No, I don't think it is," he said. "At least not under here, nohow. But it may rain outside." "It may, if it chooses," said Tweedledee. "We've no objection contrariwise. Next, please, Tom."
Selfish things, thought Alice, and she was just going to say good night and leave them when Tweedledum sprang out from under the umbrella and seized her by the wrist. "Do you see that?" he said in a voice choking with passion, and his eyes grew large and yellow all in a moment as he pointed with a trembling finger at a small white thing lying under the tree. "It's only a rattle," Alice said after a careful examination of the little white thing. "Not a rattlesnake, you know," she added hastily, thinking that he was frightened. "Only an old rattle, quite old and broken." "I knew it was," cried Tweedledum, beginning to stamp about wildly and tear his hair. "It's spoilt, of course." Here he looked at Tweedledee, who immediately sat down on the ground and tried to hide himself under the umbrella. Alice laid her hand upon his arm and said in a soothing tone, "You needn't be so angry about an old rattle." "But it isn't old," Tweedledum cried in a greater fury than ever. "It's new, I tell you. I bought it yesterday. My nice new rattle," and his voice rose to a perfect scream. All this time, Tweedledee was trying his best to fold up the umbrella with himself in it, which was such an extraordinary thing to do that it quite took off Alice's attention from the angry brother. But he couldn't quite succeed, and it ended in his rolling over, bundled up in the umbrella, with only his head out, and there he lay, opening and shutting his mouth and his large eyes, looking more like a fish than anything else, Alice thought. "Of course you agree to have a battle," Tweedledum said in a calmer tone. "I suppose so," the other sulkily replied as he crawled out of the umbrella. "Only she must help us to dress up, you know. Katrina?"
So the two brothers went off hand in hand into the wood and returned in a minute with their arms full of things such as bolsters, blankets, hearth rugs, tablecloths, dish covers, and coal scuttles. "I hope you're a good hand at pinning and tying strings," Tweedledum remarked. "Every one of these things has got to go on somehow or other." Alice said afterwards she had never seen such a fuss made about anything in all her life. The way those two bustled about, and the quantity of things they put on, and the trouble they gave her in tying strings and fastening buttons. "Really, they'll be more like bundles of old clothes than anything else by the time they're ready," she said to herself, as she arranged a bolster around the neck of Tweedledee to keep his head from being cut off, as he said. You know, he added very gravely, it's one of the most serious things that can possibly happen to one in battle, to get one's head cut off. Alice laughed loud, but she managed to turn it into a cough for fear of hurting his feelings. I'm going to take this phone call. So who?
Okay. Okay. Next reader then.
Okay. Why look very pale, said Tweedledum, coming up to his helmet tied on. He called it a helmet, though it certainly looked much more like a saucepan. Well, yes, a little, Alice replied gently. I'm very brave generally, he went on in a low voice, only today I happen to have a headache. And I've got a toothache, said Tweedledee, who had overheard the remark. I'm far worse than you. Then you better not fight today, said Alice, thinking it a good opportunity to make peace. We must have a bit of a fight, but I don't care about going on long, said Tweedledum. What's the time now? Tweedledee looked at his watch and said, 4:30. Let's fight till 6 and then have dinner, said Tweedledum. Very well, the other said, rather sadly, and she can watch us. Only you'd better not come very close, he added. I generally hit everything I can see when I get really excited. And I hit everything within reach, cried Tweedledum, whether I can see it or not. Alice laughed. You must hit the trees pretty often, I should think, she said. Tweedledum looked around him with a satisfied smile. I don't suppose, he said, there'll be a tree left standing forever so far round by the time we've finished. All about a rattle, said Alice, still hoping to make them a little ashamed of fighting for such a trifle. I shouldn't have minded it so much, said Tweedledum, if it hadn't been a new one. I wish the month crow would come, thought Alice. There's only one sword, you know, Tweedledum said to his brother, but you can have the umbrella, it's quite as sharp. Only must begin quick, it's getting as dark as it can be. And darker, said Tweedledee. It was getting dark so suddenly that Alice thought there must be a thunderstorm coming on. What a thick black cloud that is, she said, and how fast it comes, why I do believe it's got wings. It's the crow, Tweedledum cried out in a shrill voice of alarm, and the two brothers took to their heels and were out of sight in a moment. Alice ran a little way into the wood and stopped under a large tree. It can never get at me here, she thought. It's far too large to squeeze itself in among the trees, but I wish it wouldn't flap its wings so. It makes quite a hurricane in the wood. Here's somebody's shawl being blown away. Next.
Okay. Wool and Water, Chapter 5. She caught the shawl as she spoke and looked about for the owner. In another moment the White Queen came running wildly through the woods, with both arms stretched out wide as if she were flying, and Alice very civilly went to meet her with the shawl. I'm very glad I happened to be in the way, Alice said as she helped her to put on her shawl again. The White Queen only looked at her in a helpless, frightened sort of way, and kept repeating something in a whisper to herself that sounded like bread and butter, bread and butter. And Alice felt that if there was to be any conversation at all, she must manage it herself.
Oh, we got another microphone somewhere.
Okay. Not here.
Yeah, let me get. Okay, go ahead, Anne.
Okay. So she began rather timidly. Am I addressing the White Queen? Well, yes, if you call that addressing, the Queen said. It isn't my notion of thing at all. Alice thought it would never do to have an argument at the very beginning of their conversation, so she smiled and said, If your Majesty will only tell me the right way to begin, I'll do it as well as I can. But I don't want it done at all, groaned the poor Queen. I've been addressing myself for the last 2 hours. It would have been all the better, as it seemed to Alice, if she had got someone else to dress her. She was so dreadfully untidy. Every single thing's crooked, Alice thought to herself. She's all over pins. Maybe I'll put your shawl straight for you, she added aloud. I don't know what's the matter with it, the Queen said in a melancholy voice. It's out of temper, I think. I've pinned it here, and I've pinned it there. There's no pleasing it. It can't go straight, you know, if you pin it all on one side, Alice said, as she gently put it right for her. And dear me, what a state your hair is in, Des.
I've got tangled in it, the Queen said with a sigh, and I lost a comb yesterday. Alice carefully released the brush and did her best to get the hair into order. Come, you look rather better now, she said, after altering most of the pins. But really, you should have a lady's maid. I'm sure I'll take you with pleasure, the Queen said. 2pence a week and jam every other day. Alice couldn't help laughing as she said, I don't want you to hire me. I don't care for jam. It's very good jam, said the Queen. Well, I don't want any today at any rate. You couldn't have it if you did want it, the Queen said. The rule is jam tomorrow and jam yesterday, but never jam today. It might come sometimes to jam today, Alice objected. No, it can't, said the Queen. It's jam every other day. Today isn't any other day, you know. I don't understand you, said Alice. It's dreadfully confusing. That's the effect of living backwards, the Queen said kindly. It always makes one go a little giddy at first. Living backwards, Alice repeated in astonishment. I've never heard of such a thing. But there's one great advantage in it, and that's one's memory works both ways. I'm sure mine only works one way, said Alice. Alice remarked. I can't remember things before they happen. Oh, it's a poor sort of memory that only works backwards, the Queen remarked. What sort of things do you remember best? Alice ventured to ask. Oh, things that happened the week after next, the Queen replied in a careless tone. For instance, now, she went on, sticking a large piece of plaster on her finger as she spoke. There's the king's messenger. He's in prison now, being punished, and the trial doesn't even begin until next Wednesday. And of course, the crime comes last of all. Suppose he never commits a crime, Alice, said Alice. Next, please, Joan.
That would be all the better, wouldn't it? The Queen said as she bound the plaster round her finger with a bit of ribbon. Alice felt there was no denying that, of course, it would be all the better. She said, but it wouldn't be all the better his being punished. You're wrong there, at any rate, said the Queen. Were you ever punished? Only for faults, said Alice. And you were all the better for it? I know, the Queen said triumphantly. Yes, but then I had done the things I was punished for, said Alice. That makes all the difference. But if you hadn't done them, the Queen said, that would have been better still, better and better and better. Her voice went higher with each better, till it got quite to a squeal at last. Alice was just beginning to say, there's a mistake somewhere, when the Queen began screaming so loud that she had to leave the sentence unfinished. Oh, 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 shouted the Queen, shaking her hand about as if she wanted to shake it off. My finger's bleeding. Oh, oh, oh. Her screams were so exactly like the whistle of a steam engine that Alice had to hold her hands over her ears. What is the matter? She said as soon as there was a chance of making herself heard. Have you pricked your finger? I haven't pricked it yet, the Queen said, but I soon shall. Oh, oh, oh. When do you expect to do it? Alice asked, feeling very much inclined to laugh. When I fasten my shawl again, the poor Queen groaned out. The brooch will come undone directly. Oh, oh, as she said the words, the brooch fell open and the Queen clutched wildly at it and tried to clasp it again. Duncan?
Okay, so I have a question before I continue reading. How much more is there left to Through the Looking Glass?
A lot.
A lot, as in maybe 1 or 2 more weeks? A
Yeah.
lot?
Yeah.
Okay.
There are 12 chapters. We're
And
on chapter
we're on chapter 4 or something like that, right?
Well,
4 or
yeah.
5, yeah.
But the last chapter is only about 3 pages. There,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. I'm only bringing that up because we are going to have to make a decision in at least 2 or 3 weeks.
And chapter 11 isn't.
Huh?
And chapter 11 is one line,
Chapter 11's one line.
and chapter 10 is two small paragraphs.
Okay. And see, how much do we have in this?
Are longer.
Oh, this is still a fairly long chapter here.
So 9 is long. Yeah, you've got time to decide what you want to read next.
Just
Okay.
going to say there are 50 pages left in my book.
Yes, we're about halfway through the story.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. But then I think probably next week we need to have a discussion of what's after this. Okay?
Yeah.
So think about that. We had a suggestion of Claire Keegan, and we've talked about maybe the Dubliners, so make some kind of decision so we have time to gather stuff. Now, Joan, now that I've wandered away like that, help me get back.
Um, in a second, I had a thought that maybe some of the reason for this being a little less magical was because he was trying to relate it to a game of chess. So he had a pattern that he was trying to follow. which
Okay,
might
so
have-
he kind of trapped himself into a
yeah,
form.
it wasn't be so spontaneous. Yeah,
Okay.
that was. Uh, oh dear, where did I stop? I forget.
Okay,
I
well,
think
I'm just
it's
gonna.
somewhere around where she was. Is it like "Take care," cried Alice? Would that be?
That would be all the better. Oh, Alice felt there was no denying that, of course, it would be all the better. That's where it stopped.
When she's trying to fasten her shawl and she's going to
You're
prick
right,
her
right,
finger.
right.
That's where the bandage was, yeah.
Yeah, the brooch pricked it.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm just gonna jump in. I'm not entirely sure. But why don't you scream now? Alice asked, holding her hands ready to put over her ears again. Oh, well, I've done all the screaming already, said the Queen. What would be the use? What would be the good of having it all over again? By this time it was getting light. The crow must have flown away, I think, said Alice. I'm so glad it's gone. I thought it was the night coming on. I wish I could manage to be glad, the Queen said. Only I can never remember the rule. You must be very happy living in this wood and being glad whenever you like. Only it's so very lonely here, Alice said in a melancholy voice, and the thought of her loneliness, 2 large tears came rolling down her cheeks. Oh, don't go on like that, cried the poor Queen, wringing her hands in despair. Consider what a great girl you are. Consider what a long way you've come today. Consider what o'clock it is. Consider anything. Only don't cry. Alice couldn't help laughing at this, even in the midst of her tears. Can you keep from crying by considering things? She asked. Oh, that's the way it's done, the Queen said with great decision. Nobody can do 2 things at once, you know. Let's consider your age to begin with. How old are you? Well, I'm 7.5 exactly. You needn't say exactually, the Queen remarked. I can believe it without that. Now I'll give you something to believe. I'm just 101, 5 months and a day. I can't believe that, said Alice. Can't you? said the Queen in a pitying tone. Try again, draw a long breath, and shut your eyes. Alice laughed. There's no use trying, she said. One can't believe impossible things. Ah, I dare say you haven't much practice, said the Queen. When I was your age, I always did it for half an hour a day. Why, sometimes I'd believe as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. Next.
We're no longer
There
post.
goes the shawl again. The brooch had come undone as she spoke, and a sudden gust of wind blew the Queen's shawl across the little brook. The Queen spread out her arms again and went flying after it, and this time she succeeded in catching it for herself. I've got it, she cried in a triumphant tone. Now you shall see me pin it on again, all by myself. Then I hope your finger is better now, Alice said very politely, as she crossed the little brook after the Queen. Do you want to keep on reading, or do you want to talk about it? Because I think it's nearly 8:30.
Okay. Yeah. Do you have
Call your
something?
attention to the fact that I put the review of the movie Duncan talked about into the chat.
Say that again?
Thank you.
The movie that you mentioned at the outset, Duncan, I put the review from this weekend's Irish Times into the chat.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. I should.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah. Great.
I was saying Joel Kinnaman, but it's actually Joel Edgerton.
That was the woman who played his wife, I assume. Okay. Orla, did you have anything in particular in mind that you wanted to talk about related to Through the Looking Glass?
No, the only thing I was going to say was the suggestion of a book was Mrs. Dalloway, because it's 2000. It's 100 years since it was published.
No, this is the anniversary.
Yes, absolutely.
Mrs.
Yeah.
Dalloway? Oh,
Yeah. I had that in mind as well, Orla.
oh, I think that would be good.
Because I think it's a response to Ulysses.
Yeah, it came out the same year, but later, isn't it?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I heard 3 clear voices in favor of Mrs. Dalloway.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, I read it years ago.
I've never read it, so.
I would like to read it.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's very poetic, and the whole World War I experience in England.
Yep, sounds good to me.
Okay. It sounds like we have made a decision.
Okay.
Great.
And that
To
should
the
be.
Lighthouse is wonderful too.
What is?
To the
Pardon?
Lighthouse.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Mm,
Yeah.
indeed.
Okay. Well, good. That decision's made. Now, I will say concerning Through the Looking Glass, it's very interesting because there are flashes of brilliance on occasion. So at least it comes across to me as being alternately contrived and brilliant.
Well, we have Humpty Dumpty. We meet Humpty Dumpty pretty soon. I think that's fun.
Yeah.
There's a lot of wordplay and.
Mhm. Mhm.
I like Humpty Dumpty.
I like the way talking about living backwards or remembering
Yes,
forwards and backwards.
yes.
And Stephen Hawking, in The Physicist, has that phrase, how come we remember the past and not the future?
Yeah.
You know,
Hmm.
it's
Mhm.
kind of interesting, yeah. And previously, with the fawn, that thing of going into the wood and forgetting your name and not knowing who you are, I think that's really good as well.
Mhm. Mhm.
You know, like if we took away our names, you know, it would be an interesting world. But and also the opposite of that is the way we give names to everything, including ourselves, of course, and then everything around us. We give names to the thing, you know. And Rilke has in one of his elegies, the Duino elegies, he says, perhaps this is what we're here for, just to name things. We name everything, like the sun, the sky, flowers, ourselves, everything. Yeah. So that thing about forgetting our name, and she even hesitates to name the tree, like she stops. I think that's really good on Lewis Carroll's behalf. Yeah.
Mhm. I actually, during that part, I actually went and looked up if there was anything, if Lewis Carroll had done any reading in Hinduism.
Yeah. Yeah.
There were some parts that reminded me of like that whole thing about being dreamed.
Yeah. That's another thing.
Basically,
Yeah.
Brahma, in Hinduism, we have Brahma, the creator, laying down and dreaming the world.
Yeah. 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 The way he says to her, "You're only part of of his dream. If he wakes up, you'll be gone." Yeah. It's really
Mhm.
good. Like, you know, yeah.
Yeah, so I wondered if that time, I mean, I'm sure that there were influences from India drifting into
Mm,
England at that time.
yeah.
Uh, so I had wondered about that. I did not find anything, I should say, but nevertheless, and just for what it's worth, actually, Krishnamurti, a modern Indian thinker, said that when we name something, we never see it again.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
It's a
But we only see the name? I don't agree.
The name gets in the way of the scene, and that there's something about naming that. Now, this is not necessarily for everybody, Joan, but the idea is that once something is given a name, that people tend to think because they know the name that that's all there is to it.
mm,
And
No,
they,
it allows you to transfer concepts from
mm,
one person to another.
mm.
But,
okay.
you may come up with, a little different ideas of things, but if you're starting a conversation, if you didn't relate to certain names in the same way, you wouldn't know what you were talking about.
There was a concept that came through Hindu philosophy on if I ask, so what, who are you?
Mhm.
Just that simple question, who are you? And most people will reply with their name
Yeah.
or where they came from
Mhm.
or what they do or who their parents were. But that's not who you are.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Trying to answer that question, who are you? It is not at all easy. And names sort of disappear into the background.
Well, it kind of depends on how you're asking that question and at
Mm.
what, and
Yeah.
because I think who are you really can mean, are you Tom Jones or Jim Jones?
Yeah. Yeah.
Too.
Well, if I asked you, Joan, who are you?
What would, if you already know me or if you're just meeting me?
Yeah.
No, no,
Yeah.
whether I know you or not. Who are you? Can you explain who you are? Can you tell me who you are?
Well, if you have met me before, I
Yeah.
would probably tell you, you know, something about myself. The things
Yes, you
that
could possibly
think
tell me
in my nature, or
where you
Right.
come from or what you have done.
what would tell you more about me.
Yeah, you will actually give him the information that you want him to have.
Yeah, well, that's true too.
You will decide how much you are
Yeah,
going to, and at what level you're going to reveal yourself,
that's very
which
true.
is, of course, a decision that we have to make at all times.
Mm.
Particularly if we have
So
to ask
for
the
example,
question.
hmm?
Sorry, particularly if we have to ask the question of ourselves.
Yes, and that gets to be quite an interesting. That's actually an interesting challenge to answer the question, to ask that question of ourselves, who am I? We're going to easily get into some pretty deep philosophical stuff with that.
If I asked you a question and I said, "What's your favorite food?"
Mm.
and you said an apple, I would immediately because I know what an apple is,
Yeah.
because it's the name, I would immediately have a concept of what you were talking about. But if the apple didn't have a name or I didn't know what an apple was,
Yeah.
it have,
Well, okay, if you're going to go there, Joan, I'm going to say that actually everyone will have their own individual idea of what you mean when you say, I like
yes,
apples.
yeah.
Okay. And this is what words do. I mean, from my point of view, actually, words when we are talking, it's poetry all the way. We like to think that it's prose and we're talking plain facts, but it's actually poetry. There's no escape from poetry. And so, no matter what we're saying, what I'm saying is going to be interpreted by each person. There are 9 of us here today. Each person will be interpreting it
Well,
differently.
in regard to that, what you're saying, how do you define poetry?
Yeah.
I define poetry as that which attempts to describe reality while admitting that we can never plummet the true depth of it.
Mm.
It's kind of the opposite of scientific
Yeah,
thinking.
it's a lot to do with language as well, you know, and Wittgenstein was on about this with language, what we're doing when we're using language. And, you know, I think he said the limits of my language is the limits of my world, you know, so no matter what we're going to do, once we open our mouth to speak or to describe or to something, we're using language. So that comes into the situation as well. So we're like Alice, or going down the rabbit hole here.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
It's interesting.
Well, I
Humpty
think,
Dumpty, in the Humpty Dumpty chapter, he and Alice have the same conversation.
Oh, yeah,
They talk about words, what words mean, and
yeah.
what
Ah.
names mean.
Mm.
So we'll find out next week.
yeah.
we will find out.
To,
Yes, let's carry enlighten us. Yeah,
to be continued.
Yeah.
Exactly.
but I think that James Joyce was absolutely right to focus a lot of attention on the Tower of Babel.
Yeah.
Mm, mm,
That's a key story
mm.
for humanity in general, is the Tower of Babel.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
And my personal belief is that as long as we maintain a flexibility about what words mean, we'll be human and humane.
Yeah,
Well, it's
But
an
when we
enormous,
become convinced that we understand what words mean, we become quite dangerous.
Mm.
it's an enormous topic.
It's an
Yeah,
enormous
indeed.
topic, yeah, but one of the most important topics that we could possibly bring up, and it would be, of course, an endless conversation.
Mm.
Who am I? What are words?
Yeah, yeah,
What is this thing called thinking?
yeah.
So,
And
uh,
interpretation.
The ancient Greeks had at the Oracle of Delphi, on the entrance ground, there was a stone, and carved into the stone was the phrase "Genoti Sauton," meaning "know yourself."
Ah,
Mm.
The,
Mm.
the, the, uh, the Romans took it and turned it into Latin and said "Temet Nosco." But it's the same thing, coming through the different
Mm.
civilizations.
Yeah.
Know yourself.
mhm. Well, and the Zen people would say, know thyself, but it would be N-O.
oh,
No, no. I don't know.
and then of course you can have the same sentence that everybody interprets entirely different.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, my
Thank you.
goodness, it's 2:39. And we will gather together next Monday to continue this work. In the meantime, I'm pretty sure, yeah, I have a copy. Mrs. Dalloway, it'll be easy to come up with
That's right.
copies of Mrs. Dalloway. And that'll be interesting. It'll be
Mm.
good to read it in a book and a group. And and confession time, I might actually complete a Virginia Woolf book if I read it in the group.
Oh, yeah.
Mm.
It's very small,
Yeah,
Duncan.
you won't be
Oh, very
sorry.
small? Okay.
You'll make it.
Thank you very much. Well, with the encouragement from you all. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.